We're moving on to our first panel session. This is a bit, you've been sat here for a little while. Panel sessions are really great with audience participation. So, questions, opportunity later on. We've got some speakers, they're going to speak for 5 minutes each. We've got some changes to the panel. So we have Alan Francis, OBE, who's Principal and Chief Executive of Oldham College and Deputy Chair of the Social Mobility Commission. He will be zooming in and I will ask him to speak in a moment or two. And I'll call each speaker up. They're listed there for you. So is Alan on the line? Alan, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. You're actually, I don't know whether you can see us, but you're actually behind me.
I can see you. It's a very strange experience. I'm behind you, but I can also see in front of you as well at the same
Brilliant.
time.
Okay. I can't. This is going to be quite an interesting panel session then, isn't it? It's really great. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to hand over to you for your 5-minute input, and then I'll call the other speakers onto the platform. So over to you, Alan. Please welcome Alan, everybody.
Thank you very much. I'll do my very best to stick to the 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk about levelling up and social mobility, in particular the kind of common threads around FE, and I'll talk about 4 things really. First, about social mobility and what we mean by it. Second, about how that, I think, overlaps and reinforces the view of FE at the centre of levelling up. Third, some of the obstacles that need to be overcome. And fourth, some of the potential solutions that perhaps help us to move forward. So obviously in 5 minutes it's going to be very superficial, but hopefully say sufficient things to kind of conjure some interest. So the first point in terms of social mobility, why would the principal of an FE college be the Deputy Social Mobility Commissioner? Well, I think that is a reflection of where the national debate has got to, because I don't think 5 years ago that would have even been considered a possibility. And it is a reflection of the fact that the Social Mobility Commission, our chair, Catherine Birble-Singh, and myself are very keen to kind of refocus it in terms of what we mean by social mobility. So it's been very much in the past focused on one model, which is the model of largely social mobility defined in terms of moving into elite occupations, and the focus of policy has very much been on how do you improve the numbers of people from disadvantaged backgrounds going into Russell Group universities and elite professions and so forth. And in one sense, there's nothing wrong with that model, but it's very narrow. And it's a model that leaves out an awful lot of the people that we work with in FE and the people in areas like Oldham, where I work, and many of the places you work, because you might wonder then, well, what does social mobility mean for them then, if that's the measure of success? And what we're saying is there isn't a right or wrong definition of social mobility, but there is more than one way of looking at it. And one of the things we're keen to do is reshift the focus so that we think about the social mobility of those who are often referred to as the left behind. And excuse the term if you don't like it, it's just a good shorthand. Those who aren't following the traditional university 3-year degree route, and those who don't move to university cities to develop their careers. So those places and people who need different opportunities, and whose mobility might not be the dramatic Dick Whittington style of bottom to top, but might be shorter range mobilities. One of our questions is what's wrong with somebody who grows up in a family where nobody is working, who acquires a really decent technical job? And that should be part of social mobility as much as everything else. So we're going to be launching our approach on the 9th of June. Any of you are welcome to kind of join us online with Policy Exchange, where that will be launched. And the new State of the Nation report, which reports to Parliament on social mobility, will be coming out at the end of June, hopefully taking us in the direction I've just described. Now, clearly, the second point I wanted to make is about levelling up. Clearly, what I've just described is a social mobility that is very much about levelling up in terms of place and people. And clearly, levelling up is part of the reason why, as Mark's just described, FE has suddenly found itself in the position it is, in a position where it's much more appreciated, much more understood, and spoken about in much more optimistic terms. And all of that is really, really good and really positive. But there are a lot of obstacles. The extent to which levelling up will get the degree of funding that it might have got in 2019 is an open question, given the pandemic and all the other issues that now it has to compete with. And it's also not clear what levelling up is going to look like, because of course it's done through the structures around devolution. So it's going to be individual deals, which will be struck with areas based on what they perceive their particular needs as being. There's some challenges around how that will be scrutinised and measured and so forth. And so I kind of think there's an important issue here about both social mobility and FE's contribution to it, which needs to be really pushed into those kind of deals in a way that brings it to life and so forth. I think it's important to say that FE is still very fragile. We've seen a huge shift in terms of the last few years, but funding is very, very tight. I think everybody's really struggling around recruitment, which is a massive issue in terms of delivering the reforms currently on the agenda, and I think that's a challenge for the sector as a whole. But it is a very resilient sector, and so its strength is that it can embrace that range of change and does so in really creative ways. So all the things we talk about, T-levels and lifelong learning guarantee and all the rest of it. Some glitches, like how exactly will the local skills improvement partnerships work, and how exactly are we integrated with employers and so forth. And of course, the wider issue is, well, we can do all that we can do in FE, but we also need an economy that generates opportunities that we can work with. We need a current to swim in, particularly in some of those post-industrial areas that levelling up, seaside towns and rural areas where the jobs are not in great supply. And I think one of the concerns for levelling up is through those devolved structures, too often the devolved authorities see skills in a very transactional way. They see it very much as if they controlled the funding, then they would be able to match supply and demand, and that would make the skills system work. And that's just doesn't grasp really the fundamentals of what FE is about, the opportunities FE brings, nor does it get to the root of some of these social mobility challenges in those areas. So we would like to see levelling up really embracing the kind of full vision of what FE can do and what social mobility means in both of the ways I described them. So the traditional model and the new model, about trying to make sure that we're extending opportunities of different kinds to everybody. And that can't be done if we just focus on controlling the resources. It's got to be focused on building effective local partnerships where we look at all of the factors and collaborate about improving them that affect the outcomes in different neighbourhoods and places. That's families, it's schools, it's better post-16 options, and it's the link between those post-16 options and the economy. And I'll give you a really good example, I think, of how we're trying to grapple with this in Oldham. We just completed an economic review which tries to look at the levelling up challenges in this particular town as part of the Greater Manchester structures, bearing in mind the history of the place and the opportunities that we have. And we focus on the challenges of growing business, the challenge of skills, and the challenge of linking that with building the social fabric, the voluntary sector, the sense of pride and so forth. And what I would say is that social mobility and FE both have a contribution to play in all of those respects. It's not just a transactional relationship. It's about really understanding how to capacity build FE to deliver the role that's being asked of it, because there's a lot of change being asked of us, and I'm confident we can do it, but we do need to be built up over time. And it's about recognising the full wider role that we play. So yes, it's dealing with skills, but it's also dealing with a lot of the other obstacles to social mobility which are important, like crime, risky behaviours, the whole challenge of why some communities don't engage with learning in the same way as others do, the legacy of low adult skills and so forth, which, within a 1 mile radius of my college, 40% of adults have no qualifications. We happen to be in the poorest part of Oldham, so that's not the figure for the whole of Oldham, but that's true of that 1 mile radius. And these are some of the real big challenges of social mobility and levelling up that FE colleges can lead on. So I think what we want to see through levelling up is a really strong sense that social mobility measures and the role of FE should be really strongly built into those deals in ways that are measurable and support and capacity build us to help deal with some of those really nitty-gritty problems. And I will leave you on that optimistic note, because I think that's where we would like to see the role of social mobility, and really putting some challenges out to say, in those levelling up deals, are we really extending the opportunities to the people who need them most? And are we supporting the organisations that are best placed to do that? I think I've gone over 5 minutes, but I hope I've made my points clearly enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Really great input, particularly from your perspective as principal and chief executive of college, but also the deputy chair of the Social Mobility Commission. Moving on to our next panellist, and I owe her a big favour, and because Deb Gray has stepped in at the last minute. She's a new trustee to our board, and I think she's just suddenly realised what being a trustee of our organisation means. I am really delighted that Deborah Gray, who's the newly appointed principal and chief executive of Hull College, has agreed to step in at the last minute. I'm sure you'll welcome her to the platform, and we look forward to hearing her input around levelling up and social mobility. Welcome, Deborah.
Good morning. So, being a trustee means this, Paul. I think we do need a conversation later. I'm not planning to retread the same ground that you've already heard from Alun. What I thought I would do instead is tell you a more human story about social mobility. And I thought I'd tell you my story, because I'm actually a product of social mobility. I am the result of what colleges can do. So in the early 1970s, I was born on a council estate in Sheffield to a single-parent family. My dad was an alcoholic and was not in my life much at all. And I was one of those kids. You all know what I'm talking about. The kid who maybe smelled, who had bruises, the kid who always needed a wash at school. I was one of those kids. So what changed my life? You did. People exactly like you. People who cared. People in education who saw something in me that I never would have dreamed of seeing in myself. People who took the time and the energy to intervene. People who said, the start of your life doesn't have to be the end of your life. That things can change for you if you want them to. And then people just like you showed me how. So it's a much more human story of social mobility. Sheffield College changed my life in the early 90s, changed the life of my sister, who also went there. And as a result, has changed the lives of my children, who wouldn't have had anything like the life they enjoy now without Sheffield College. What that did for me is it gave me an absolute drive to change things for young people who were in my position. So I've spent my entire career working in areas of high deprivation, serving colleges and serving communities which really, really need FE colleges as their anchor institutions. I currently am CEO and principal of Hull College. Our student body has around 30% of high needs and learning difficulties. The vast majority of our students are level 1 and level 2. And around 70% of them come from the top 1% most deprived wards in the country. Levelling up for us is every single day. It's what we do. It's who we are, and it's what we stand for. We make a difference. We change lives, we create ripples, and we plant seeds in a garden we will never see. So, in terms of policy, what does that mean? What do we need? We need a decent funding settlement. We need to be paid properly for what we do. We need to be invested in. And Mark's not wrong. Skills is very, very high on the agenda for the government. But at the minute, that isn't coming into our coffers. It's for bids. It's for short-term projects. Where's the long-term investment to transform communities? Where will that come from? And who will make sure that gets done? I think one of the biggest advocates, the biggest things we can do as a sector for social mobility is be much more upfront about our stories. Because the story I've told you, I know is mirrored in this room 100 times over. I know education made the difference to people in this room too. So I think we need to talk about social mobility in terms of policy, in terms of strategic direction, but also in terms of the human impact and the absolute difference it can make to every young person's life and every adult who comes to us to retrain. For some of our students, we're their first choice and we're their best choice. And for some, we're their second choice. They might have tried something and they're coming back into education. And for some of our students, we're the last chance. And we take that absolutely seriously. And I know I'm in a room with people who believe exactly what I believe, that every day we transform lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. That was fantastic. And isn't it always good to hear the personal story of the difference that FE and skills make? So thank you, really appreciate that. Our next speaker is Simon Ashworth, again deputising for Jane Hinckley, who unfortunately is ill and unable to be with us this morning. So Simon is Director of Policy. I was going to say something else then. Director of Policy at AELP. He's also a governor of a college locally and has been involved in education and skills for many years. So please welcome Simon to the platform.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Paul, and good morning, everyone. How'd you beat that? That was a fantastic introduction from Debra as well. My name's Simon Ashworth. I'm as Paul says, I'm the Director of Policy at the Association of Employment Learning Providers, AELP. I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with AELP, but for those of you who are not, AELP is a national membership body proudly representing around 800 organisations. AELP members support thousands of businesses and millions of learners in England by delivering a wide range of training, vocational learning and employability programmes, including the majority of apprenticeships, traineeships and skills boot camps. We believe that our members are pivotal in being part of the fabric in supporting the levelling up agenda for both young people and adults alike across all of the country. This session on levelling up could not come at a more timely event as the government's flagship policy agenda rolls out at fast pace. Skills has never been higher on the government's agenda, and this is reflected in the white paper, which is of course a good thing, and we've heard that from our colleagues already. But we know that the critical element is a sustainable and well-funded system with a strong and equal role for providers of all types, a point I thought Mark made particularly well this morning. My worry, though, is that levelling up will be nothing more than hollow rhetoric without the right funding, checks and balances. Having analysed the document at length over the past few months, it seems the announcements and funding commitments have been repackaged from existing announcements, such as those from the 2021 spending review. The government's long-awaited Levelling Up white paper contains strong ambitions around delivering social mobility across every part of the nation, with skills, schools, families at the heart of the agenda. Given the huge role that independent training providers play in delivering skills, we urge the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, and his ministers to appreciate their work and understand how they can play a big part in the delivery of the Levelling Up agenda. The target of getting 200,000 more people each year by 2030 into high-quality training includes 80,000 more completing courses in areas of England with the lowest skills levels. It's ambitious, but achievable with the right investment. AELP, of course, supports this ambition, but urge further detail on how this plan will be achieved, and essentially how this relates to the Level 2 and below qualification review, which is causing concern for the sector. I could go on about that at length, and maybe we'll come back to it during the discussion session later. Widening access to skills at entry level is critical to levelling up when much of the government's focus so far has been at level 3 and above. From conversations that we've had with Skills Minister Alex Burghardt, we do think the tide is turning a little. Alex has a good appreciation of the importance of level 2. We just hope this is backed up by meaningful action from the government. Matching skills to local labour markets is a challenge for the economy as our relationship with the European Union changes. different regions have different skills requirements. And that's why we support the devolution of skills programmes where there is evidence towards improved take-up and delivery. However, there are still some programmes such as apprenticeships and traineeships which are best contracted at a national level. We also have concerns that a more diverse approach to commissioning of skills funding could have a significant impact on the ability of ITPs and others to deliver on for adult learners and national employers. Finding a balance between producing responsive, localised skills programmes and not creating an over-bloated bureaucracy is a huge challenge. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund has been introduced to replace the money that Britain received through the European Social Fund, ESF. Most of the ESF dedicated to skills was delivered by ITPs, so the way in which the UK Shared Prosperity Fund operates will have a significant impact on our members. We support the UK Shared Prosperity Fund's aims of boosting core skills and supporting adults to progress into work. However, we are incredibly concerned that the skills element of UK SPF, with the exception of Multiply, is not due to be introduced until 24-25 financial year. This means a gap between ESF grant funding and the new arrangements. A funding hole like this will have an immediate impact on a range and number of programmes that our members can provide, already putting the disadvantaged adult learners at further risk of disadvantage. It will also add to the further financial pressure on the sector at a time of rising inflation. Levelling Up has so far focused too much on place and not enough on people, as demonstrated through the Levelling Up Fund and now the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. We urge ministers to rethink the decision to only start allocating the skills element of UK SPF from 24-25 and to ensure that there is no gap with ESF. We also believe that in the spirit of Levelling Up, UK Shared Prosperity Fund should be weighted towards funding skills programmes that support the needs of adult learners with low levels of qualification, as well as those who are otherwise disadvantaged. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an immense impact on young people's access to the job market. We believe that every young person should be able to undertake an apprenticeship, traineeship or work placement. In order for the most disadvantaged people to access the labour market, we need to see more funding of level 2 and below qualifications, as well as appropriate incentives for employers to take on apprentices and trainees. Furthermore, the current careers advice and guidance system needs improving so that young people know about all the options open to them, with a parity of esteem between academic and vocational routes. This means the Baker Clause, legislation that ensures colleges and training providers must be allowed into schools to give careers advice, needs to be extended and properly enforced. We've made some positive strides on this through our lobbying around the Skills and Post-16 Education Act, but the challenge is now making sure that the government makes good on its promises. In conclusion, the success of Levelling Up is reliant on a sustainable skills system. AELP welcomes many of the ambitions in the White Paper, but we remain concerned that these ambitions will not be realised without sufficient investment in learning and employability programmes that are proven to deliver the skills that communities and local economies need. We need to see much more detail from the government on how this is going to work. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. If you want to join Deborah on the sofa, that'd be great. Before we open up to questions and have a conversation with our panellists, I'm delighted to welcome Mamello Atisa. Mamello was a recipient of one of our grants, and she's going to join me on the platform, and I'm going to ask her a few questions before we move into the conversation around this particular issue. So if you'd like to join me, that would be... Come and join me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What prompted you to go on the program? Tell us a little bit about the program of study you went on and what prompted you to go into it.
It kind of goes back to a few years. So I had just come through a long-term illness, and having come through that illness, I went back to work and hoping to have that stability, that restart, and I was kind of excited to go back and do something that felt normal. And a short while after, I was made redundant from the same job. So I was kind of left with this idea of, what am I supposed to do now? There were several factors. I was a little bit older, so I didn't feel like I had that bounce. And also, how can I put it? Yes, I think being ill had left me, had changed me quite considerably, even though I wasn't fully aware of it. So, to answer your question, what made me go to education? Well, I needed to do something. I needed to find a safe space again, some stability, and to answer the question of what now? What do I do now? And who am I now? And so many considerations. So I went back to education with the hope that I would find some kind of direction for the next phase of my life.
Where did you study?
I studied, initially I did an introductory counseling course, which was probably just for me to mend a few things and understand things about myself. But I studied at Fashion Enter.
Okay.
And yes. And
Fashion and textiles?
Fashion, pattern, sewing. Didn't really have any idea why I was doing it, but I just thought, why not, you know?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And what were the challenges and concerns you had about going back into study? Because that's a big thing, isn't it, in terms of, you know, especially if you've been through an illness, you've lost your job. It's a big thing to go through a door of a classroom. I know it's very practical at Fashion Enter, but it's still a big thing to summon up the courage. What kind of challenges did you face?
I think the first challenge was really the idea of a career. I'd been doing something quite different. And so exploring and trying to find the courage to explore something new, and whether there was any merit to what I was doing. So that's really what took me there. One of the other challenges was because fashion, I think, to some extent, caters to the young. And I was starting out, and there were a lot of people who were very experienced already, who had been doing fashion and understood that this was their path, and there I was. So I kind of felt a little bit, there's an expression for that. What is it when you are...
A bit of a fish out of water?
No.
Fair enough.
It will come.
Yeah.
It will come. Sorry.
Imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Imposter syndrome.
I get that all the time.
Do you? Yes, imposter syndrome. Yeah. So yes. So I was always asking myself, should you really be here? Maybe you should have done this a bit sooner. And then there were also the social idea that I was doing it for a bit of fun. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe this is not really a career path, because it's okay for me to be doing it for fun, but how far will I get with it as a career? And I don't particularly have a high aptitude or anything like that in terms of the skill. So I needed to learn the skill. And I just took my chances, basically.
Okay. You were the recipient of one of our grants. How did that help you?
Enormously. Aside from the vote of confidence, it basically said, we value you, and we're going to not only finance you to give you this chance, we're going to take a chance on you ourselves. But it was quite an interesting process in that I found that the sense of confidence and possibility was almost instant just by the act of being awarded the grant. And I was suddenly able to see other things I could do. And that hadn't really occurred, but it's been such a boost. And it allowed me as well to reflect on the changes and to think, well, you know, how do they fit in? Because I suppose my resistance to the changes were, especially the redundancy, was that it wasn't on my time scale, you know. So
potentially knocks your confidence.
yes, and it did knock my confidence. It kind of, you know, it left me wilting with all sorts of strange questions about who am I and all that kind of thing. But what this has done, what the grant award has done, really, I'm sitting here, which is a very long way from before the grant, because I think what I also felt was that it's very important to express the hope I felt and the bounce and lift it has absolutely given me.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant, thank you. And what's next for you?
Lots of things, I hope. I'd like to build a small collection initially from the fashion. I'd like to walk across Scotland for reasons I have not thought about why yet. Just sounds
But
nice.
why not?
Why not? I can.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And yeah, I'd like to, yes, I've always dabbled around kind of playing different instruments, and they're not begging me to return, but I might pick up one or two dusty ones.
I think I could do the walking across Scotland. I think nobody would want me to be playing any kind of instrument anytime
Me
soon.
neither, but I'm not sure. I mean, why not?
Absolutely, why not?
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank you
indeed.
very
Thank
much.
you. Stay there, that's fine.
Okay.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I've got a set of questions to ask our panellists. Is Alan joining us back on the screen?
I'm still here.
There you are, Alan. That's great. I've got a few questions, but you don't really want to hear from me. Has anybody else got a question that they'd like to put to our panel? I can see. If nobody puts a hand up, then I will... I see one. Is that... Have we got a microphone? Is that Fiona? Fiona, we got a mic... Down in the middle, Sandra, just in the middle there. Halfway up. Can you put your hand up, Fiona, just so that they can see? There you go. And then we've got another one that's just here for afterwards. Are we on?
Is that on? Yes. Fiona Aldridge, West Midlands Combined Authority. It was a great set of contributions, all coming at things from a different angle. Thank you. One of the exciting things of my role, and a number of you touched on devolution, is that I'm getting to shape the West Midlands Combined Authority Trailblazer devolution deal. Lots of opportunities there to think about the role of skills and FE in levelling up. I'd like to ask the panel, given that this is a devolution deal for the West Midlands but a blueprint for other devolution deals, what would they like to see within those deals?
Okay. What would you like? Debra, you're nodding.
It's a really interesting question, isn't it?
It is.
Devolution has many positives, and there are also lots and lots of drawbacks. I think the challenge often is geographical, because providers don't often just sit in neat and tidy geographical designations. We're a case in point, so we are in the Hull and East Yorkshire LEP, but of course 10 miles across the water is Lincolnshire, and the Humber Industrial Complex don't see those divisions that are made artificially by politicians. They simply see they have a need that needs to be served. The one thing I would stress is there are very, very established providers in areas, independent providers or colleges from out of region who deliver specialisms. They, in the first wave of devolution, were often pushed out in favour of providers who did not have a history in the area and did not have a track record of delivery. And that's a function of the bid writing process and how much resource you can apply to that. But don't forget the specialists. Don't forget the people who've served that area for years and years very successfully as part of that. I would also say green skills and digital skills are on everybody's radar, but they're not the only skills in town. And when you consider the skills mix and provision in the round, when all we do is invest in particular skills, we're social engineering where learners go. We're not allowing them necessarily to make choices about what they want to do and who they want to be. So see how broad and rounded you can make that skills provision.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Simon?
Well, yeah, that's a great question from Fiona. Probably slightly different view to Debra, I guess. I mean, I think local skills doesn't necessarily always mean local providers. One of the things I definitely do agree with Debra on is about track record. I think that's really important around who's going to deliver those skills. I mean, it's a really great opportunity, isn't it, with devolution, you know, because it allows innovation. West Midlands is one of the areas that's been one of the trailblazers around, you know, innovation and its approach. I guess one of the concerns and one of the wishes, I guess, that we would have around devolution is to try and still keep some degree of consistency. Certainly when you're thinking about working with regional, national employers, it becomes very difficult when all the areas have different offers. You know, and going back to what I was saying earlier about the kind of qualification review, you know, that the government is saying that, you know, they want the combined authorities to decide which qualifications at level 2 below they're going to fund for adults. And we could end up with a sort of postcode lottery and then a qualifications lottery as well, which could be quite a challenge. So definitely it's a real kind of balancing act between you know, autonomy and flexibility, but having some degree of consistency around systems and how, just to enable some providers to be able to have a joined-up approach, thinking about large and national employers would be my plea.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Alun?
Thank you. A great question. I would say 3 major points. The first is it's about your own role. Is not to see yourselves as planning the system, but much more as using your convening powers to help coordinate, challenge effectively, but bring people together around a kind of common strategy. And that means building on the expertise in the sector, which I think is really strong. And I think that's where the strength of devolution can be, is to draw out those strengths and give them really sharp focus. And that's very different from planning and very different from just commissioning. The second issue I would say is to think about capacity building the provision that you want to have. And that is different to commissioning, where you're basically buying it in, but it's about seeing what needs to be done in terms of building the institutional arrangements that need to deliver your vision in the longer term. And in particular, I think, in terms of FE, I think capacity building is very, very important, reflected in lots of the comments we've had today. And then finally, in terms of social mobility, I would say I think social mobility should be stitched into those deals, but it's about really working on what your social mobility priorities are, because there are different definitions and different ways of thinking about this. And actually, probably most levelling up devolved areas need to think about both the kind of Dick Whittington, Russell Group University elite view and the view that I described today, which I think is a different kind of approach. Both are required to help areas turn round. We need an innovative economy, which has a range of people delivering different parts of that agenda, so both need to be important. But it's about what does that mean for the West Midlands in particular, because you will not be the same as Greater Manchester or Newcastle or other areas.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. And our next question.
Hi there, my name is Kate Huxley. I'm from York College, business tutor. It's not really a question, it was just a comment really on Debra Gray's. We plant seeds in gardens we shall never see grow. And I just wanted to let you know it means an awful lot that you say that, and you recognise the stories and the backgrounds of people who come to us and the changes we make, because I have a similar story to you, and college changed my life. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Got a question right at the back.
Well, I'll stand up. Morning, everyone. I'm Shane. I'm from FE Week. In about 25 minutes' time, we expect the Chancellor to announce a £10 billion package of measures to support people with the cost of living crisis. Pretty much every panellist today has talked about more money going to institutions, but I want to ask you about more money getting into the pockets of learners and staff, particularly low-paid staff. So how concerned are you as leaders within the sector about the impact of rising energy bills, the stuff going on in your learners and your staff's everyday life, getting in the way of some of the ambitions that you've set out around social mobility and levelling up? And what are you already starting to see some of that come through? We're starting to hear stories every week about, you know, bursary funding running out really quickly, colleges and providers having to do really creative things to support really vulnerable students who are having a really tough time out there right now. So is there something you can say about the people, getting the money to the people as well as to your institutions?
Thanks, Shane. One of the things that we've noticed in terms of the grants is where the focus and why students particularly need grant funding, and cost of living is starting to feature as a really strong issue. Alan, if I could turn to you first.
Okay, thank you. It's a great question, so thanks for asking it. I don't think there's anybody in the country that isn't or shouldn't be concerned about the cost of living, particularly its impact on communities like the ones that lots of FE colleges prioritise. So, in Oldham, we have got a huge amount of dependence on universal credit, many people working in very low-paid jobs. There's a lot of problem of working poverty. And, when you look at the astronomical leap in energy bills, that is really very devastating for those families. We obviously can't, as a college, can't really influence, those outcomes, and so that really has to be a government priority. But I think what we can do is do our best by our staff. We know that there is a gap in terms of FE pay compared to schools and universities. We know that individual colleges are doing their best, I think, to make sure they give the best deals they can to their staff. But we have to work within very tight constraints to do that. And what I would say is that there's two issues that have kind of come together. One is a long-term issue about the need to improve the pay in FE. In order to deliver the vision that we've all been talking about today, that is very important. I think there's a massive recruitment problem, and I think that is not unconnected to the issue of pay. It's not the only issue, but it's a very important part of it. And then on top of that, the cost of living issue, within which, and in that respect, we're in the same boat as everybody else, but the issue about FE pay, I think, is an important priority, and I'm glad the AOC have picked it up.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move to Simon next.
It's another good question, isn't it? Very pertinent. I mean, the one thing that our members are talking to us all the time is about the impact of inflation, driving up, wages. We've got a real challenge at the moment around recruiting staff, attracting staff, retaining staff, being able to put on provision. So absolutely, it's probably the number one thing that's really having an impact at the moment around being able to put on provision, and put on high quality provision. You can roll out all the stats, can't we? That on adult funding, we haven't had an increase in the rates for 10 years. So we're having to do more for less. Functional skills, the funding's dreadful on functional skills. The learners that need, support in maths and English. We've got 17 million adults with poor numeracy skills. How can we do that on a shoestring? But for me, I guess one of the examples that I heard very recently, talking to one of our members, talking about impact of this, thinking about it from an employer's perspective, we see programmes like adult care on an apprenticeship funded really poorly at £3,000. And one of our members told us recently, that they've had to make a business decision to reduce the number of employers that they work with. So they work with about 150 employers. To kind of scale that down to about 20 because they can only make it work working with large employers on scale, in volume. So, that's having a big impact on smaller employers who take on young people. So we're starting to really kind of see this. So, inflation on salaries, consumables, real concern. So absolutely we'd like to see something done on that really quickly.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Debra.
I think we're all desperately concerned. I don't know a principal who isn't. It isn't just about the institution. I think that's a very fair challenge. It's about what does the bills look like for each individual member of staff, and particularly our more low-paid staff, and how can we work creatively to get more money in their pockets with a very limited funding settlement and many colleges still running deficit budgets. It's hard at times simply to keep the lights on. We're lucky to be on a fixed term tariff at the moment, but when that ends, my main campus dates from 1957 and is not energy efficient in any way, shape or form. So we're looking at potentially £200,000-300,000 increase just in heating bills. And I've spoken to some principals who are looking at $500,000 just on their energy costs. So how then do we get money into staff's pocket? The answer is I don't know. And I very much hope the government can support us by investing in us properly so we can pay the staff what they need and what they deserve at all levels. The challenge for us is we're trying to prepare people for a 21st century knowledge economy, high digital skills, high engineering skills. And those people who teach that come at a premium. So on the Humber Bank, a typical engineer can earn £60,000-70,000. There is not a hope I can match that in further education. So where does that income come from? Do I make economies elsewhere? Do I stop running things? Well, the truth of the matter is my city needs all of the skills we offer. It doesn't matter whether it's 21st century knowledge economy or whether we're training the hairdressers or the veterinary nurses of the future. The city needs everything. And so we do need more money in so we can make sure that money trickles down into the pockets of our staff, so we can make sure our students are fed and clothed, because everybody in here who works either at an independent training provider or works at an FE college will know our students are coming to us hungry. They're coming to us sometimes not able to buy basic cosmetics, deodorant, shower gel. We provide those things. I don't know a college that doesn't. In what 21st century economy is that right?
Thank you. Any more questions? Somebody's going with a microphone, so I'm assuming we've got another question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandra Cowley from Futures, and we deliver careers advice and skills. I went back to school yesterday and went back to my secondary school for the first time in 42 years. No story like yours, but actually just to tell a story of I didn't do well at school. I just wondered what the panel thought about, yes, levelling up about a skills policy, but actually it's more around also the synergy between careers, employment and skills, and what your thoughts are. Because we're trying to tackle social mobility at further education. We need to, those young people, and it was in one of the most deprived areas of Mansfield, those young people don't even see past the horizon of their local area. And I just really would love to hear some thoughts on that. And, Sir John Holman's review is coming out next month, and just really what your thoughts are.
Brilliant. Going to quickly, if you could deal with that quite quickly because we're coming to the end. So Simon, I'm going to start with you.
I mean, I touched on it in my presentation, the importance of, very effective careers, information, advice and guidance to make learners aware about vocational routes. It's a kind of really key point, isn't it? Some of the findings that we've seen from some of the local skills improvement plan pilots, start to think about not necessarily the job roles, but what are the skills, knowledge and behaviours for the individual to kind of ensure that they're portable and ready for those future skills. So it's a different way of thinking. So for us, there's a whole point around accessibility and awareness. I think that's getting a lot better, but also how we think about the future jobs and the skills for those young people. I think we just need to have a slightly different approach around, what their job roles will look like and how we can support them to plot their path for their right career.
Brilliant, thank you. Debra.
It's not good enough and it doesn't start early enough. It needs to start in primary and early years, because that's where people's dreams are made. I wanted to be a starship captain. I love Star Wars and Star Trek, and I've still not given up on that, honestly.
Oh, hang on, just a minute. I think I've seen plenty of photographs of you being at work, leaving from the start. Yeah, absolutely.
But it needs to start in primary, because that's where dreams start to be built. It's where you can start to drip feed key industries. By the time they come to us at 16, often they've made choices, or they've got ideas about what they want to do that may not match what's in the area, what's available. So it needs to start much, much earlier.
Okay, and Alun?
I don't know what Debra means about she wanted to be a starship captain and she hasn't got there so far. She runs a massive FE college. What could be more like running a starship than that? So,
I think, if I remember, she was Princess Leia on the day Ofsted walked through the door.
I was a Jedi.
A Jedi, that's it. Absolutely. But you weren't allowed your lightsaber in the...
I wasn't allowed my lightsaber in the base room, that's correct.
That's right. Sorry, Alan.
It's such a massive question, and it's such an important question, but I would just focus on those who come into FE really not knowing what they want to do at all. Some, all of our learners are different. Some come with a very clear view, but many really don't know at all. And I would say a positive thing and then a more challenging one. The positive thing, I think, is compared to where we were 10 years ago, the whole debate about knowledge, skills, behaviour, about employability, about building in really good work placements and so on, we're in a much better place than we were because I think it's taken much, much more seriously in terms of policy and the way that curriculum is designed. And I think the kind of conversations we have in the sector and I think the skills we expect our tutors and assessors to have reflect that. However, there are no easy solutions to helping young people who don't have lots of good role models around them and don't have a wide experience. You know, their experience might be their local neighbourhood and their local schools, and they just don't have that wider view of the world of work or what's required of them. And I think that is a really big challenge for us to help them to understand that.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. Time has escaped us. If you could give our panellists a warm round of applause for their input.